single most question I get as an English Channel swimmer from other swimmers is how to then go about doing it. It can feel really confusing when you've got pilots you have to book with, different associations, loads of different advice from people who maybe took different routes. So I'm looking to break it down for you to make it nice and simple. Before anything else, there's a couple of prerequisites though. First of all, I'm assuming you're already some sort of swimmer, swimming on a regular basis, able to take on an increased load over time, being able to then swim across the English Channel. I did a talk with Catch, the digital swim coaching app, and I'll include a link to it in the description, talking all about how to know you're ready for the next big swim challenge. Another prerequisite is that you already know how to swim in open water, to a degree. We're just not talking beginners here. So step 1, you're contacting your pilots. You can find pilots on the Channel Swimming Association and the Channel Swimming and Piloting Federation websites, and from there you'll be able to see which pilots charter boats for swimmers across the English Channel for each association. For the most part, there isn't a huge difference in which association you choose. I went with the Channel Swimming Association simply because it was the one that I was able to find the right pilot through. Now there tends to be a 2-year lead-in for any English Channel swim at the moment. So when you're contacting your pilots, bear that in mind. They might have a few cancellations for nearer the time, which is appropriate if you feel like you've got some more of that experience, as we'll go through in a minute, but otherwise you can book 2 years in advance. Now when I ended up booking my English Channel swim, which was on the 11th of June 2024, I didn't realise that was going to be such a cold swim. I thought because it was June, it would be nice and warm and I'd have lots of sunlight to swim in. And the sunlight was right, but it was also incredibly cold, about 13 to 15 degrees for the whole swim, which is all right if you've got that experience, but also if you know that you are not cold acclimatized, maybe go for more of like a July, August window. So you contact your pilots and they'll send you a contract, and through there you can be able to see which ones are going to be best for you, whether that's certain stipulations in your contract or simply the dates you want to prefer. I ended up going with Viking Princess 2. Again, they were the first people that got back to me with dates available. And some others had a bit more time before they were releasing dates, but I wanted that certainty pretty quickly. Now step 2, get to training. If you've got the standard sort of 2-year lead-in time, that can feel like ages before your swim is going to happen. But that doesn't mean you should be complacent. At this point, I'd recommend getting some sort of coach. The Channel Swimming Association and the Channel Swimming and Piloting Federation websites might have lists of accredited or approved coaches that have helped loads of swimmers get across. The Channel Swimming Association website for sure has a list of coaches that have been really great in helping swimmers get across the English Channel. But to start off, you can set yourself some milestone swims. Knowing what distances you want to achieve by when can help set up the rest of your training. And if you've got a 2-year lead-in time, it can be really great to know when you want to peak in the season before your swim as well. So then you can build up your base so you've got that fitness and distance in you before. When considering your training and some of your milestones, don't just consider the distance, consider the conditions too. As part of my milestones, I built in swims specific to the skills I would be needing. So for example, I did an overnight 8-hour swim in Windermere just to make sure I could do that distance whilst also feeling quite disorientated. And it was really great because I got to learn about how I dealt with lights on the back of me, and it prepped my crew for feeding me in the dark. It's not just night swims too, it can also be things like choppier conditions. It can be things like the wildlife and whether or not you're used to them. I certainly hadn't swam much with jellyfish beforehand, and I had quite a few on my English Channel swim. Step 3, register with an association. Registering with an association is usually done in the winter before you've got your English Channel swim, so you've still got time if you haven't yet even booked it. The 2 main associations for the English Channel generally go by the same sort of rules, so it's not that big a difference. But making sure you register, so that involves paying fees early on to make you either like an affiliate member or a member of the association for that year, enabling you to then fill out the paperwork for your English Channel swim. Which brings me on to step 4, completing your checks and paperwork. Now, when I swam the English Channel, I had about 60 pages of paperwork to go through. Not all of it was relevant, some of it was relevant only for relay swims, but certainly there's a lot to go through, so starting earlier is highly recommended. The kind of checks you can also assume are going to be in there are things like a medical done with a doctor, the sheet for which will be in your paperwork, and also things like having a signed off 6-hour qualifying swim. Dependent upon the association, sometimes they pick different temperatures that it has to be under. Usually it's about 15 or 16 degrees. So you might need to pick a certain time of the year to make sure you do your qualifier in the right temperatures. And if you're lucky enough to live in the southern hemisphere, you might find it actually quite difficult to not only get the right acclimatization done for how cold it could be, but also to make sure that qualifier gets done. If you check the paperwork, it also mentions how far in advance of your swim you can do the qualifier. This brings me on to step 5, which is continuing your training. I mention it here because you might want to consider things like a swim camp before your swim, or some exciting build-ups to make sure you're ready. There's a number of different long distance swim coaches that run their own swim camps, particularly for channel swimmers. Now, not only do you want to consider these potentially for the year of your channel swim, but also before, where you can learn from other people who are about to do their channel swims too. In my build-up, I found this invaluable to be able to learn about things like different hints and tips for feeding, knowing what sun cream is going to last the whole time, and having an opportunity to get a bit of insight into their mentality going into it. You'll also make some amazing friends, so highly recommended. Step 6, ride the Dover coaster. For me, the Dover coaster started immediately, where my window opened and I immediately got the go-ahead for a swim at 3 a.m. the next day. I got a call only 20 minutes before we were due to leave our accommodation to say, the swell's too high and it's not a goer today. So suddenly we were all awake, high on adrenaline. Me, my family, my crew, who'd also travelled a really long way to be with us, only to then be told, it's not going ahead then, and it might not the next day either. So we had to try and go back to bed with so much energy. So the next day instead, we were able to relax on the beach and have a nice dip. A couple of days later, it was then we got the go ahead again to be able to go across the English Channel. And it's that constant up and down of emotions as you think, I'm going ahead, no it's not, as the conditions change in real time. Ultimately, it happens because your pilots want you to have a successful crossing and be as safe as possible. But at the time, it can feel certainly quite overwhelming. So know that you're not alone in that. I'd highly recommend spending some time at Swimmers Beach and checking in with other swimmers who might be waiting around the same time. And then step 7 is do the swim. So when you're setting off, remember all the preparation you've put in to get there, because it will have been a lot. A couple of tips from me. First of all, do it scared. I'd love to see so many more people on the start line of swimming the English Channel. When you first book it, there can always be nerves. Are you going to be able to swim that far? Are you going to be able to dedicate yourself to the training? What about jellyfish? What about feeding? What's going to happen with life between now and then? 2 years is such a long time. But my second tip would be, yeah, do it scared, but don't do it stupid. Do as much research as possible in advance of your swim, and watching this video is certainly a starting point. With plenty of training and preparation, I think almost anyone could swim across the English Channel. But it is for sure still an extreme sport, and it can be incredibly dangerous. I did mention at the beginning that sometimes there are faster routes to be able to do it. What that usually means is that here at step 1, you're able to get booked in with a pilot sooner than you thought. Maybe somebody has an injury or for other personal reasons has to drop out of their swim window, and it means you can buy their slot from them. Now obviously this speeds up the process quite significantly. So if you feel confident that you've done the training, you've got the open water experience, you've maybe even done some other channels or other significant swims around the same sort of distances, then I'd highly encourage you go for it anyway. Good luck. If you've got any more questions, drop them below and I'll try and help as much as possible. Happy swimming.